Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Danielle Hawker.
And what is your relationship to Christine?
She's my sister.
And do you have some testimony that you would like to present to the judge about the loss of Christine in your life?
I would.
Please go
Thank
ahead.
you. Again, my name is Danielle Hawker, and Christine Banfield is my younger sister. My family has publicly stayed silent since my sister's murder, except for a brief statement after the trial concluded. We chose to protect Christine and Valerie to prevent the media from contorting our words or create fodder for keyboard warriors. We were, however, not spared the media's attention. In the hours following Christine's murder, I received a call from a reporter masked in sympathy, asking for a statement and pictures of Christine. Since then, my husband and I have received countless calls and emails, but they pale in comparison to the overwhelming volume my parents have endured. Christine does, however, deserve to be talked about by those that loved her. Grief is not something that is done on display or shared, except those closest to you, and even then, it is more often hides behind closed doors in quiet moments. Internally, I feel like a different person, like my identity has shifted in an unimaginable way. Part of who I was, who I still am, is a big sister, and in what seemed like seconds, it was taken from me, taken from us. While justice was served, it does not lift the grief or make more space for it. It will never bring Joseph Ryan back to his loved ones or Christine back to our family. In the 3 years since Christine's death, some days I feel like I'm living with a ticking time bomb waiting for it to explode. Fear and anxiety taking over, my mind telling my body that something else terrible is going to happen. I waited for answers, for more information. I was in a perpetual state of limbo. The daily messages I would receive with pictures of Valerie stopped and were replaced with calls from reporters wanting the next headline. The text Christine and I exchanged stopped. The evening call I would randomly get while she was driving home from work would never happen again. The trip I had booked to celebrate Valerie's 5th birthday the following month would not happen. Life as I knew it ended, yet I remained guilty for living and left without the one person who should have known me the longest, gone. When we were little, Christine and I would often get mistaken for twins. We were nearly 4 years apart, my baby sister, or my sissy, as I like to call her. We both had curly hair, but otherwise, I didn't understand what other people saw. When I look into a mirror, I sometimes see her first, my face replaced by hers, and in a flash, she's gone, and I'm left confused by my own reflection. She was her own person, never trying to be me, but always wanted to be by my side, and I hers. I don't remember much of my life before she was born. I have only a handful of memories that are more like looking at a picture. I do have a vivid memory of going to the baby doctor with my mom and Grammy, our maternal grandmother, who we also called Grammy Bird. Grammy would keep me entertained by walking around outside and picking flowers. During one appointment, I was stung by a bee and became upset, wanting my mom. Grammy brought me inside, where a baby monitor showed a dark, blurry image I couldn't understand. As she held me, my mom pointed to it and said it was the baby. At just about 4 years old, the same age as Valerie was when Christine was killed, I was excited to be a big sister. Once she was born, I became we. I haven't stopped saying we when I speak about my childhood after her death, except now when I do, it takes my breath away, a pause filled with love that has nowhere to go. We were each other's first friends, sleeping in each other's bedrooms, in sleeping bags, on the floor, or in tents in the den. I climbed in her crib several times and attempted a solo diaper change unsuccessfully. Our best friends were sisters. We would stay up late on Saturday nights, waiting for our dad to come home from his 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. shift, watch Saturday Night Live, and eat hot bagels he picked up on his way home. Our favorite show was Full House, and we would get in giggle fits at our grandparents' house for no reason. She would fall asleep anywhere, like a New Kids on the Block concert, or in a short car ride, telling me to wake me up when we be there. She was obsessed with the Backstreet Boys, specifically Kevin from the Backstreet Boys. She loved them so much, she got and she and her best friend camped outside a Rite Aid while the moms took turns sleeping in the car in a parking lot. This was the 90s. There was no internet, only a Ticketmaster at a drugstore. She loved Brad Pitt, Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt, so much that if she had a boy, I was sure she would name him Tristan. Our childhood was spent at home, in our basement playroom. At friends' houses, we would call on our corded landline to see if they could come out and play. On family vacations, at our grandparents' houses in their pool, fishing on our dad or our grandfather's boats, crabbing off a dock with Grabby Bird, eating Entenmann's cakes and drinking coffee out of tiny cups at La Grandma and Grandpa's house, our paternal grandparents. We got our first haircuts from our paternal grandfather, a professional barber in our backyard, and he would give us Charms lollipops from his in-home barbershop and shove $5 in our hands as we left. We didn't have internet until high school and cell phones until college. We played outside catching tiny frogs, lightning bugs in jars, and used our imaginations to find fun anywhere. We had family traditions that mostly revolved around food, Italian food to be specific. In our house, we ate macaroni, not pasta, and sauce, not gravy. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners, and countless big and small events were spent with our aunts and uncles. Our grandparents were a large part of our upbringing as they were ever present in our lives. Grammy Bird passed away in September of 2022, just 5 months before Christine. Our family was still grieving her loss when Christine died. Even though we may have looked similar, we each had our own distinct personalities. She was kind and caring and precocious as a little girl, thoughtful and wise beyond her years. It was no surprise when she said she wanted to be a nurse at a young age. Her warmth only grew as she got older. She had a way about her that made people feel comfortable and welcomed without effort. New people scared me, and I was awkward in social situations. She loved being around friends, and large groups didn't intimidate her like they did me. She was a resident advisor in college, always looking for ways to help others. She was reliable and selfless, and would give up her own time to help a friend in need. After she finished college, we found ourselves living in our childhood home again. It felt a little like we were kids again, but without the sleeping bags. It didn't last long as she started her first nursing job and wanting her independence. She lived her life at her own pace, and I didn't question her decisions unless she asked for guidance. I listened and asked questions so I could better understand what she needed before offering any advice. The memories we shared growing up helped shape my sense of love, family, and who I am. They felt simple and whole, filled with laughter, safety, and love. Since losing her, those same memories have changed. They are no longer just joyful, but layered with grief, each one a reminder of both how much I had and how much was taken. Christine was married the year before my husband Joe and I. I look back on this day with a heavy mix of emotions. I was so happy for her about to start her journey to becoming a family. That feeling is hard to hold onto now because it still feels like a happy memory, but mixed with a deep sadness. What rushes in now is the realization that we will never experience milestone events again. No birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmases, family vacations, family traditions, no new memories to form. Our family will still celebrate, but there is a missing piece, an emptiness that fills the room. The weight of that feeling makes it hard to move through the day, like walking through water fully clothed. When Christine found out she was pregnant with Valerie, she was living in New York. Joe and I were living in New Hampshire. She mailed me a card that said, "I miss the crap out of you." It made me giggle, and when I opened it, there was a sonogram picture that immediately made me think of her on that baby monitor. I was so excited for her. Deep inside, I was sad for myself and my husband. Just the day before, I'd had an invasive test after several years of infertility, which led to more questions than answers. I never told Christine about that procedure, and I regret not leaning on her for support. 3 months after Christine's death, I was in the hospital recovering from surgery, finally getting answers. She should have been there, holding my hand and reassuring me that I would be okay after a nearly 8-hour procedure complicated by the von Willebrand's disease, the bleeding disorder that we shared. Less than a year later, I faced another major surgery. I was terrified, not just of the procedure, but of the possibility of leaving my family behind after losing Christine. I had no sister to turn to as I tried to make sense of a new reality, a future that no longer resembled the one that I had imagined. That future had already been taken from us. What remained was an ambiguous grief layered on top of an already soul-crushing loss. I try not to dwell on the support she might have given me. The imagined conversations I have with her offer little comfort. The day Christine was murdered lives in my head on repeat, starting with the early morning text Joe received from my father, in all caps, "Call me now," to collapsing on the floor after grabbing the phone and hearing the words from my father that Christine was stabbed and had been killed is mixed with my own screams, the two forever intertwined. My parents were going over a bridge on their way to Virginia for an overnight stay with Christine when they received the devastating news. I was full of anxiety about them driving after receiving this horrific news. The plan Brendan carried out with Juliana needed unknowing participation from my parents to be sure that they would be home, or that she would be home from work. They would still have several more hours to drive while informing family of Christine's murder, hearing shock and expressions of grief repeatedly. No parent should have to make that phone call, but they did it again and again. This is the burden of a parent that loses a child. Watching the immediate news coverage set off countless imagined scenarios. Somehow I found myself reliving something I had never experienced as if I had been there. I envisioned Christine's fear, felt her terror, and wished I was there to take her place. I no longer had a sister. I was no longer a sister. I said this on the phone with an old friend that day, and she told me that even though she was gone, we would always be sisters, and we cried. I flew to Virginia the next day. My parents picked me and my aunt, who had flown in from New York, up at the airport. They were quiet, moved slowly, and I could see the heaviness of the loss pushing them down as they tried to hold the weight of the pain my sister endured in the last moments of her life. I knew I had to be strong. I had to hold back tears not to upset them further. One day, Joe and I will be entrusted with caring for my parents as they grow older, and we will meet that responsibility with love. But no matter how much we give, it will never feel whole. That role was meant to be shared with my sister, together as daughters, making decisions, supporting one another, and walking through this stage of life as a family. Unknowing participation would be the cornerstone of Brendan's plan. He used friends and family to continue his affair with Juliana and formulate his plan. He used his own daughter as a part of his plan to bring her into the house to kill her mother. He lured an unknowing participant, Joseph Ryan, to his death. Based on the accounts from Joseph Ryan's loved ones, he had a kind soul, put others' needs before his own, and would have tried to protect my sister from harm, not cause any. During the course of the trial, I learned that on October 29th, 2022, Brendan and Juliana went to a gun range. That same day, I, along with our mom and aunt, visited for Halloween. We spent the day at various Halloween events in the area with Christine and Valerie, while Brendan and Juliana perfected this part of their plan. When I learned this, I went numb. I felt as though I had in some way been used to facilitate what happened simply because I didn't recognize the signs. Since then, I have replayed countless moments, fixating on small details and convincing myself that I should have noticed something, that there must have been a clue that I missed. But looking back with information I did not have at the time distorts what I actually experienced, yet the emotional weight of the guilt still feels real. The shame runs deep, and it has caused me to question my own judgment and perception, even though I understand that I was evaluating incomplete and concealed information. Guilt is meant to be tied to a choice, and I did not choose harm. Despite this understanding, I continue to struggle with the feeling of being drawn into something I never knowingly participated in. I know rationally that these feelings are misplaced, but I do not yet know how long it will take to fully reconcile them with what was done to my family and the way that I was implicated in it. I didn't truly know Brendan at all. I don't believe anyone did, not family, not friends, and certainly not Christine. His testimony was the most self-serving display of narcissism I have ever witnessed. He attempted to smear her through outright lies and victim blaming, accusing her of betraying the oath she took as a nurse, an accusation that not only attacked her integrity, but further wronged the vulnerable patients in her care. As Christine's sister, I didn't just lose her. I had to sit and listen to a version of her that did not exist. I knew her in a way that he never could. I knew her honesty, her compassion, her refusal to live with secrets. Hearing him attempt to rewrite her life and her character felt like losing her all over again, piece by piece, in a room where she could not defend herself. His lies did not just attempt to destroy her reputation, they forced me to relive my grief with anger and helplessness I cannot fully describe. He was the one that had countless affairs, several attempts at finding the right mistress that would eventually help carry out the plan with him, because the absurd line of questioning about a plan didn't just develop when he started his affair with Juliana. I believe she meant no more to him than anyone else in his life. She was just another person to control and exploit. What he presented as affection was manipulation. What may have appeared as love was nothing more than strategy. If there had been any genuine intent to build a life with Juliana, he could have chosen a lawful and honest path. He could have divorced and moved on. But divorce would have required relinquishing control, and control was always the priority. His actions were not driven by love, but a desire for power, deception, and a complete disregard for the lives he destroyed. The callous way he spoke about Christine will one day be heard and seen by Valerie. She will eventually come to terms with the fact that her father, the person who was meant to protect her above all else, used her and put her directly in harm's way. Valerie may hold only a faint memory of a life untouched by loss, but for most of her years she will know her mother through grief and the stories of others share with her. We will do everything we can to fill those stories with light, so she comes to know her mother through joy and love, not only through the weight of what was taken from her. Christine's last words and thoughts had to be about Valerie. If she had done enough in the short time that she had with her, worry about who would care for her, not apologizing to Brendan and making sure he knew how loved he was. Christine chose to dedicate her nursing career to caring for the most vulnerable, to babies and children during their most difficult moments. She provided comfort to frightened parents who wish they could take their children's place. She made those moments more bearable with her big smile and infectious laugh. I can still hear her laugh in my head. Christine dedicated herself to her daughter, who will grieve her loss at every milestone in her life. I will be there, never to replace my sister, but to tell Valerie who her mother was, remind her of her big laugh and even bigger heart. I will tell Valerie how much she was loved by her mother, and I will forever carry both the grief of losing her too soon and the gratitude of having loved her for 37 years and being loved by her in return. That bond will not end because we will always be sisters. I want to thank the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for their commitment to pursuing justice, to the members of the jury for their time, care, and responsibility they took in reaching their verdict, to the Fairfax County Police Department for their dedication to seeking the truth and for honoring my sister and Joseph Ryan's life through your work. To the Victim Services team for their compassion, care, and support they have shown my family, going above and beyond for us during an unimaginable time. And thank you, Your Honor, for your commitment to fairness throughout this trial, for your patience today, and for allowing me this opportunity to share a small glimpse of who Christine was, what she meant to me and my family, and how her loss has profoundly shaped and will continue to shape my life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please answer any questions that Mr. Carroll may have.
Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you can have a seat. Thank you. All right, your next witness.
Judge, the next witness is going to be Deirdre Fisher, who is appearing virtually.
All right, ma'am, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. You raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, could you please state your name for the record in the court
My name is Deirdre Maureen Fisher.
and your relationship to Joseph Ryan?
I was Joseph Ryan's mother.
And do you have a statement that you would like to read describing the impact of Joe's loss in your life?
I would, yes, thank you.
Please go ahead.
First, I'd like to say I wish I could be present in court today, but for medical reasons, I have been unable to attend the trial. But in my stead, my sister Grace Fisher-Littner is here and has been for the whole trial. And my cousin, Jan Gillis. So I thank them both for being here, for Joe and for myself. And I'd like to thank the Honorable Judge Penny S. Ascaratis and this courtroom for allowing me to give a victim statement today for my beloved son, Joseph Nathan Ryan. I would like to speak about the impact of losing Joe, his brutal murder, the trial, that the murder and cruel, false claim that Joe himself was a murderer. Most importantly, I want to speak about the type of man Joe was. When I had Joe, I was just 16. I did not have financial, legal, or physical ability to raise my son. Despite being discounted as his mother, I fought for the right to see him and prevailed as a loving part of his life. Joe became old enough by the age of 14 to pursue a closer relationship with me. He told me at one point I was the reason he learned how to love unconditionally. I spent holidays and vacations with Joe. He called me often. Our closeness spanned the rest of his lifetime. I was the last person he called the night before he was brutally murdered. He sent me a photo of himself that night. It was the last time I got to hear the word mom. I got a call about his murder 2 days after it occurred. As in life, in death, Joe was taken from me over and over again. The lead detective explained he had not been told I was Joe's mother. He was compassionate, and I would go on to include me, as he did, and the defense team in updates about the murder investigation and legal process. When he gave me the horrible news that my baby had been murdered, taken from me again, I let out a primal scream. I cried. From that night on, I have felt the deepest loss I could ever experience. My only child was gone, but the nightmares and pain were only just the beginning. Over these more than 3 years since Joe's murder, my life has been filled with continued loss and with emotional and medical and financial trauma. I have not been able to function normally. I have navigated a barrage of emergency room calls, doctor's appointments and hospital stays, and surgeries. I have spent a great deal of time not able to function or care for myself at home. A direct result of the murder and devastating trial that ensued. I developed a heart condition and ulcers. Just last month, well, it would be a few more now, I had my toe amputated after not being able to fully grasp the pain that I needed to seek prompt medical care. That also means the medical bills piled up again, and working became nearly impossible. Would I have experienced such severe trauma without the brutal loss of Joe? Certainly not. When Joe was alive, he would fly or drive to care for me. And when I needed, and it included cancer twice, he was there. That brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. Who Joe really was. Brandon Banfield, his defense team, even some of the press carelessly characterized Joe as the intruder. The fetish guy into rough sex. The rapist and the murderer. Or simply the other forgettable guy. Not even showing Joe's face during the murder trial. Joe was chosen because Brendan Banfield thought he would make a good dupe to be framed for the planned murder of his wife. As with so many other things, Brendan was wrong. In some ways, my son was flawed, regular Joe. But he also had some amazing qualities. Joe was extremely caring. He lived with his grandmother and was dedicated to her health and her well-being. He moved to Florida to care for his parental grandfather, Pap, before he died from advanced dementia. He went for 2 months to care for a woman he loved who had radical hysterectomy, also taking care of her young daughter. That's part of who Joe was. Joe was a guy who believed in fighting for the underdog and even actual neglected dogs. He would walk into an animal shelter and ask for the oldest, ugliest dogs. Bring them home and love them for years. When Joe was murdered, he left behind a dog named Kitty, who waited for him at the top of the stairs. Joe also did things like gardening, feeding stray cats, teaching autistic kids to do jujitsu, and working at a homeless shelter. He believed that those with less should be fairly treated and supported, that Black and brown people should not be marginalized. Joe also was a feminist. He spoke out about the mistreatment of women during the start of the Me Too movement. Although he was chosen as a scapegoat from a website that is considered fetish, he was on that site to find a consenting partner because he believed in a woman's right to bodily autonomy and in her control over her romantic and sexual life. Joe wasn't just the disposable caricature he was made out to be. He had a face, he had a name, he had a life. But Brendan Banfield shot his face, soiled his name, and treated his life as disposable. My son was a kind human being who had a full life of meaning. In contrast, Brendan will remain known as an abusive father, the brutal murderer of his dedicated and compassionate, beautiful wife, and a narcissistic killer of an innocent man. My son's legacy is one of selfless love, while Brandon's is one of senseless evil. I have never directly spoken to Brendan, and I won't today. To me, he's nothing more than what I just said. But Joe, yes, Joe, was someone to me. He was my baby boy, my biggest supporter, and the man I think was pretty special and never forgettable. Thank you so much for letting me say this out loud and share some of my love for Joe and the loss I felt I will always feel. He was part of me, and I will never get that back. But I will choose to live in his fighting spirit and with his voice in my head. Be kind to yourself, Mom. Take better care of yourself, Mom. Love you, Mom. I won't forget you, Joe. I hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please answer any questions of Mr. Carroll.
Any cross-examination? All right. No cross-examination. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Your next witness?
Thank you.
Judge, the next witness that I have is Sangeeta Ryan.
All right.
You swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case under penalty of law. Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Sangeeta Ryan, and I am the aunt of the young man I met as a preschooler with a giant backpack and a tiny pink purse who was called Joey Nathan Ryan.
And do you have some testimony to share about what the loss of Joe has meant to your family?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Hello, Honorable Judge Ascarati, members of the Fairfax County team, members of the gallery, our family, Christine's family, friends, and members of the press. We are Joe's family. We're the people he loved, and we loved him. With the exception of speaking once at Ms. Perez Magalier's sentencing, we have remained silent since this tragedy devastated our family 3 years ago. Judge, we thank you for listening to our words back in February. We chose silence out of respect for law enforcement, for the Commonwealth, and for Christine's family, whose loss is beyond imagination. Christine was taken by the very person she trusted to build a life with and raise a child with. We also remained silent because Joe and Christine were not only taken from us on February 24th, 2023, but were repeatedly disrespected by the defendant's calculated lies. Let me be absolutely clear. This was not a moment of weakness, confusion, or loss of control. This was a deliberate, planned act carried out by someone who believed he could outsmart the system and escape accountability. And even after taking 2 lives, the defendant continued lying to investigators, lying to the court here, lying to his child and her family, and attempting to manipulate anyone who would listen. What we witnessed was not remorse. It was arrogance. It was a sustained effort to rewrite reality in order to protect himself. That matters because it shows exactly who he is. He didn't just take Joe and Christine from us. He tried to erase the truth of who they were, and in doing so, inflicted further harm on the people who loved them. This crime did not just take Joe's life. It took his place in the world. It took a son, a grandson, a brother, a cousin, a friend, a caregiver. He took my nephew, Joe, on purpose and left devastation. Every day we see the impact of that loss. Joe's grandmother, Connie, who raised him from the time he was just days old, now lives with a grief that has only deepened in time. She was there for every milestone of his life, his childhood, his school years, his prom, his first car, his growth into adulthood. And in return, as Deirdre said, Joe was there for her. He built his life around caring for his grandparents and making sure they were never alone. Since his passing, her health has declined. She's not here today. The absence of Joe is not abstract. It is constant, visible, and devastating. Joe was a kind and loving person. He was funny. He believed in the goodness of others. He was a friend, a caretaker, and someone who brought light into the lives of those around him. He is deeply loved. He's remembered. He mattered, and he still does. The only solace we hold on to is this: love endures. It lives in the stories we tell, in the way we carry Joe with us, and in how we choose to live our lives moving forward. Today we speak, and today we find our voices, and today our silence ends. We will spend our days and our lives saying Joe's name. We will carry forward his kindness, his goofiness, his love, and his spirit. His absence will always be felt. His chair will remain empty at our gatherings, but his presence will never truly leave us. We do not forgive. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated decision followed by a deliberate and ongoing attempt to evade responsibility and distort the truth. Today, we take back Joe and Christine's memory from the lies, from the manipulation, and from the man who thought he could control their story even after taking their lives. He no longer controls anything. We leave here with our heads high, not in silence, but with purpose. We will honor Joe and Christine by living with the same kindness and love that they gave so freely. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be Joe's voice and Christine's voice. And thank you for your service to the community, Judge Asgarati, as you approach your retirement. May we all find a way to love more deeply and bring more kindness into the world. Thank you from the Ryan family.
Thank you. Please answer any questions of Mr. Carroll.
No cross-examination here.
All right, ma'am, you can have a seat.
Thank you.
All right. Your next witness?
That was my last witness.
All right. Commonwealth's evidence. Does the defense have any evidence?
No, Your Honor.